Is Michigan in more hot water than we expected? And who are our top 5 Big Ten teams? Grab a drink and join us on tonight's Tailgate. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Obviously, we're in a new situation here. I'm joined, as always, with Michael and Dennis.
Hello, I'm Michael.
That would make me Dennis.
But we are now officially remote. We are all going to be doing this from home. We're out of the studio and into the comfort of our own places. So, Michael, obviously, everybody knows, moved.
Mm-hmm.
How'd that go?
It was a wonderful 22-hour drive. Yeah. It was. Yeah. We drove straight
to the close crowd, just like you always wished, man.
Yeah, I'm so much closer to that fan base. It's great. Actually, I'm really close to CSU, and those guys are awesome. So that fan base is great. I'm going to
just make sure that if you ever get around Deion Sanders or the Buffaloes, you can't touch the receivers, you can't touch the quarterbacks, and just stay away from Travis Hunter.
And both sons.
Yeah, I mean, I know, I understand. They're like, they need to be revered. So I don't plan on going to Colorado for any games. I might go to some CSU games, but I don't plan on going to Colorado themselves, just because I've heard their fan base is atrocious. So I'm also just going to avoid Boulder because it's got terrible traffic. So,
you got to do what you got to do, my friend.
Anyways, so there's bigger news that we're dealing with that we're dealing with this week instead of me moving. It just the past couple days we had more news come out about the Michigan stuff. So Michigan, it sounds like Moore has also been implicated in what's been going on. He deleted a bunch of texts or whatever. Some people are going to say that's not a big deal, but that is direct non-cooperation. Michigan has consistently shown that they're not cooperating properly with the NCAA. And it's interesting because while that came out, we also have the juxtaposition of this 2-year-long or 3-year-long investigation that's happened at Kentucky that was kind of really well kept under wraps. But Kentucky had to vacate all of their wins from 2021 for something that happened off the field. So what are your guys' thoughts on stuff that happened on the field that's technically cheating? And should Michigan be treated more harshly than UK was? Or does this mean that because of how harsh UK was treated, does that mean the NCAA is going to come down harder on Michigan? What are you guys' thoughts?
I mean, for me, it's going to be the fact that I feel like it should go even harder for Michigan. But if it doesn't, we're definitely going to see who the golden child is, who NCAA loves, and they give them any kind of pass that's less than what equivalent to what Kentucky is basically going to happen. Their stuff was off the field. Technically, Michigan stuff was also off their own field, off the field. They weren't on the field.
Yeah, but it affected the field. It actually affected the gameplay. If everything
that affected the gameplay,
it affected the gameplay.
And plus, just horrible disguises. I feel like in this case, Michigan, Central Michigan should also get some kind of just being associated with it. I've seen the photos on just social media, and I'm like, this has to be AI. This has to be just a fake photo. And I'm like, nope, these are real photos. This is a real disguise. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. How did he even get through?
Yeah, I think for me, the crazy thing is just the fans, and that nobody is taking any kind of everybody that you hear everything from, everybody does it. It's like, okay, well,
bad argument.
Prove it. It's a bad argument. So just because if everybody does it, then that doesn't mean that it's right. You hear it's just crazy. But I think the thing for me is I think what the NCAA is doing with Kentucky is setting a precedent. True. And what they're kind of going, okay, we're dealing with Kentucky and we're talking about Kentucky right now, but we also know that we also have Michigan to deal with. And, Michigan, their lawyers are talking about, how they're going to handle it. And there's all this news getting leaked. But I think NCAA goes, okay, well, we're going to give Kentucky a little bit of maybe a stiffer punishment than what they might have, just so that then Michigan now, they go, okay, well, look what we did with Kentucky.
Sure.
We vacated all their wins. And again, the big thing that a lot of people don't know is that they can vacate wins, which essentially means Michigan didn't win, but neither did the other team.
Yep.
Or they can forfeit wins, which means not only does Michigan lose the victory, but the other team gains the win. So to me, I wouldn't be surprised if you start to see some of that. Okay, we're not just gonna vacate, we're gonna forfeit. Sure. And all of those are gonna go, which for me, the thing that I love about that is that first team to 1,000 wins is gone.
Is gone. Yep.
Like, I don't even care about the national championship I mean, I do. But
sure, bragging rights to that.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if you're gonna ask a Michigan fan, they'll just say, "Oh, we're gonna be the only team to ever do it twice. We're gonna get to 1,000 wins twice." But that's what I think about the Kentucky thing. I think that it is the NCAA setting a precedent, saying this is what we're doing to them, so that when we do something worse to Michigan, that's what's gonna happen.
I do think it's interesting, like the NCAA considered the violation that Michigan has done in Kentucky as both the same thing as level 2, with level 1 being the worst. As of right now, from information I've been able to gather, like it just says, hey, they're both level 2 violations. I'm like, one did happen for a few years. I mean, both happened for more than just 1 year, but it's just like I feel like one is way more effective than the other.
So the information that I'm getting is that Moore's actions are level 2, but everything else is level 1. So Stallions is definitely a level 1 violation. And so the problem is that the Stallions one is going to take a lot longer. They already know that Moore he deleted text strings and stuff like that had to do with communication between him and Stallions. And they also found out that it was deleted on the day that everything the news broke last year. And which leads to an even guiltier verdict for Moore, and that's like he obviously is trying to hide something. And the thing is, if they know what it's been deleted, they can also recover said deletion. Like, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, is that just because you delete a text off your phone doesn't mean it's gone. And so, like, I think Luke, you're right. I think there's a precedence that is being set, because again, the NCAA kind of was slapped around a little bit earlier this year by Tennessee and Virginia in court. But that was because NCAA was overstepping their bounds with NIL rules that they hadn't put in place yet, and trying to retroactively go after teams, which didn't make any sense. But I've had a lot of people that have told me, they're like, oh, well, Michigan's just going to do the same kind of slap down on the NCAA, and just, they're overstepping too. And I'm like, the difference is that you guys actively broke rules that were already in place. And I just think about it from a competitive spirit perspective. Regardless of whether or not everyone else does it, no other teams seem to be getting caught doing it. So that means that every other team in the entire sport is significantly smarter and better at doing this than Michigan, or there's really not as many teams doing it as people think that there are. And
I'm a believer everyone's doing it, but no one is doing it as bad and as obvious.
Sure.
Michigan.
Sure.
Well, again, it's to what level? Yeah, and that's the big thing. That what's the level of this that you're doing? Obviously, one of the things that Urban Meyer said was that he had somebody dedicated to Michigan. And Michigan fans took that and ran with it as, oh my God, I'm watching this.
Scouting.
Is admitting to scouting and no, he had somebody whose sole purpose was watch the film that we're given from the NCAA, watch the things that you can do, and figure it out.
Yep.
And now, who knows? Maybe they did something illegal. Maybe they did something against rule. We don't know. But that Michigan fans are doing a good job of kind of twisting words whenever they can. And I will say, one of the things that if there's anybody on the Michigan crew, the Michigan, team that deserves a pat on the back, it's their PR department.
Oh yeah.
Because somehow every single time you have Michigan, Jim Harbaugh and what's their Ono, the athletic director, not the president, going into the meeting with the Big Ten and the NCAA saying, we're going to fight this. This isn't true. We're going to fight this. And we're, all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then they come out of it and they're like, we didn't. We're not going to fight it. And for some reason, it's not an admission of guilt. It's not, oh, they did catch us. It's, well, they were just doing it for the kids because they didn't want this to be a distraction. Their PR department, amazing. Like,
Sure.
Good job to them.
Yeah, they're just doing their job.
They're doing their job, but they're doing it well.
Yeah.
They're doing it.
Yeah, you got to give them props to
to be in Michigan's NIL.
So, but with
That could be another thing too. That's part of their budget.
Mhm.
But with all that said, and all those spins and stuff like that Michigan's been doing successfully, in the media, how do you think that that's going to affect their standing for a lot of, top rated like Big Ten teams this upcoming year? That like where we need to get into that because again we've got our top 5 for the Big Ten. But there's a lot of people out there that still have them at the top, even though they lost probably the most players out of anybody in NCAA football. Maybe not FCS.
Yeah, I think they've got 5 returning starters.
Yeah, I mean they only have 36% returning production. So
now to be fair, the guys that they have returning are some big names.
Sure.
Some big guys. Their defensive line is going to be, or the middle of their defensive line is going to be pretty stacked. I just don't see it. I don't see them being a top-ranked team. Now, I think they could benefit from the Big Ten maybe not being as great in that middle part of the Big Ten. The top is very heavy, but I think that they may benefit from just the Big Ten not being as strong as the SEC.
Well, the Big Ten is just more top heavy than pretty much any other conference right now. But with all that said, let's start at our top 5. So Dennis, you wanna start us off with your number 5, and no, you can't use multiple different people.
No, I feel like this conference.
But you want Luke to start? Okay.
I feel like this is conference. I feel like it's only right.
Okay.
This is the it's where you pause the rest.
So are you saying that you didn't prepare?
That's exactly what
I'm thinking it has to be first place because all your answers are not going to be first place going forward. So I'm getting to be there.
I did pick Louisville.
I'm being a little nice.
Yeah, we have video evidence of it.
So I've got for number 5. This is kind of I'm picking a little bit of a flyer here. I'm going Wisconsin.
Oh.
Now I think that I'm a little bit higher on Wisconsin than a lot of other people are. I really like the transfer quarterback Tyler Van Dyke from Miami. But then they've also got a 4-star linebacker that came in from USC is Tackett Curtis. I really like what Luke Fickell's doing there. I think he's done a good job of kind of transitioning them from that ground and pound to the more of that air raid, as we've talked about with Rich from I can't think of what their name was. Oh, that's gonna make me mad. But from our Wisconsin guy, Rich, I like Luke Fickell. I think he's doing a great job. So I've got them at 5. They've only got 10 returning starters, 5 on offense and 5 on defense, but they've got 70% of their offensive production back and 71% of their defensive production back. I think Tyler Van Dyke's going to do a good job. So I've got them at number 5.
Fair enough. Dennis?
It's a solid pick. My number 5 is actually going to be USC. I think they'll actually finish out Homer. I'm 5. Like, what kind of Homer am I?
Well, you're gonna.
Anyways, continue. It's your list.
I do have them at number 5. I feel like they have enough talent to still be able to compete offensively in the Big Ten. I feel like without much of an issue there. I do have high expectation and high hopes for defense coordinator Lynn. I think he was great when he was at UCLA and just a year there. He was able to show what he was able to kind of showcase there. So being at USC for 1 year with, I believe, probably a stronger overall just recruiting class and able to have more funds than UCLA, I feel like he should have a stronger effect. And Big Ten being what it is, like we all said, it's very, very top heavy. And Miller Moss did great in the bowl game. And so I feel like, hey, it's going to continue through the success of everything as well.
Yeah, if Miller Moss can continue on that bowl game success, they're going to do well. And I think
he had like 6 TDs. So
yeah,
if he's able to replicate that, close to it,
I think that's as many touchdowns as the Iowa quarterback had last year.
I think so. If you combine both seasons, the year before and the last.
No, I do think it's very interesting that we're starting to bring in. Oh, USC has been like, love it or hate it. Like that's another they got more money, so they're going to be able to bring more players.
Yeah, they're going to be able to bring more players, more star power, which is, I mean, again, that's good for the Big Ten in general. It's the reason why the SEC has been so dominant for so long. Is there's a lot of schools with a lot of money, and versus like Big Ten who only have a few schools with a lot of money.
Yep.
So my number 5 is US. I'm just kidding.
Homer.
Homer. So on to my top 5 pick. My number 5 pick. Again, I was joking that it was USC. It definitely is not USC.
UCLA?
Nope. It is not a California school. No, I've actually drunk a little bit of the Kool-Aid. I actually think Nebraska is going to be somewhat of a powerhouse this year. They have,
that's not the actual Pat Mahomes, right?
I understand.
Right.
It's
a lookalike.
Yeah, it's his lookalike, but there's a lot of things. There's a lot of people that are saying that he's going to be incredibly good. Whether or not he's a prima donna off the field is irrelevant. If he has on-field talent, that's really what's going to matter. Doesn't mean that I'm going to like him. Doesn't mean I'm going to like Raiola, but it just means that I could like his production. Matt Rule seems to be doing a lot of what Heupel has done at Tennessee in the sense that he's building a culture out there that hasn't been there for a while. And so I think that there's a lot of possibility. The weirdest thing I think is going to be the fact that you're going to see a Nebraska that's more QB centric than running back centric. And so it's just going to be, and more pass centric too in that regard. The other thing that's making me lean that way is that the fact that they've got 71% production returning. Like that's pretty stinking good for a team. I get it. They didn't do phenomenal last year, but it was also his first year. He was dealing with a bunch of, people he didn't recruit / portal players that had only been there for half a year. So they're all just getting used to each other. And then on top of that, they have a strength of schedule of about they're 57th in the country right now, which bodes well for them because it means that they've got an easier route potentially. Now, granted, strength of resume is going to play a much bigger role, but at least from the get-go, they very easily could have a minimum of a 7-8 win season, and go into a decent bowl game or something like that. I foresee them going anywhere between 8 to 10 wins this year, and so it's just that would be they're my number 5, and it's just because I've drunk the Kool-Aid a little bit with them. I just think that
makes sense.
I just think they're going to do something this year. So
I think you could probably make an argument that all of us have drank a little bit of Kool-Aid for our 5th pick.
Sure.
For our number 5 team. But now my number 4 team, I don't know if I'm drinking Kool-Aid. I don't know what I'm doing. I've got Iowa as my number 4 team.
All you did was drink Kool-Aid then.
Yeah. So but I've got a reason. I think I've got a good reason.
He didn't want to
do that. They had a receiver.
Well, no, they didn't. Well, they may have. I don't know. But
they didn't.
They had 17 starters returning. Now they got no transfers. So they're one of those teams that didn't get any transfers, but they've got, I say this kind of jokingly, 80% of their offensive production is back. 58% of their defensive production. But the big thing is that Deacon Hill is gone, and that was their quarterback from last year. Yeah. And Cade McNamara, who was supposed to be their quarterback last year, is back. He was injured last year, so he is now back and playing. Any improvement in the offense, and they're going to be looking for
that is an incredibly low bar. I want you to understand.
No. Here's the thing, and I wrote this down because Deacon Hill last year, he played He played in 12 games. He started 8. He threw for 1,096 yards on 115 completions with a 4.7 average and a 49.4 completion percentage.
Is that
He had
PA or
he had 5 touchdowns passed for and 6 interceptions.
Yep.
He had 43 rushing attempts for negative 106 yards.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So you add Cade McNamara in there, and I think that Iowa's going to be number 4.
I get it. I get the Michigan quarterback's going to make them look better. But that's fair. They're going to have a good defense. They're going to have a good defense. That's not going to be under like any kind of scrutiny there.
Nope. And that's where I'm like I'm banking this on their defense still doing Iowa defensive things, Iowa special teams doing Iowa special teams things, and Iowa's offense not being a liability.
Well, is so also part of your point the fact that their offensive coordinator is gone? They got a new offensive coordinator.
Well, that's never a bad thing either.
No, when your offensive coordinator is the worst in the country. Because if your offense is worst in the country, that means your offensive coordinator is worst in the country.
Sure.
Period.
And so you do that, you add a quarterback. I think I see them 4. And plus, again, they're used to being there.
Fair enough. So Dennis, what California team did you pick for number 4?
UCLA.
how'd you know? No, now I'm actually going far from California coast or just the West Coast in general. But my 4 team is Rutgers.
Okay.
Like,
And you're making fun of me for Iowa?
they actually have an offense. Compared to Iowa, they probably had the best offense in the whole college.
Well, everybody does.
I have a better offense.
Last year.
Just me, my cat. Just go and play cat.
Last year, here, Luke, who won their bowl game? Was it Rutgers or was it Iowa?
We're not going to go down this game.
And who they play? A team that you favored it, right? From the ACC. Yeah, want to remind you?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
No, I feel like they're going to definitely be a team that's, if they played before they had that losing skid towards the end of last year, then I feel like they're going to be a very competitive team. Even within the Big Ten, I feel like even when they played Ohio State last year, I know Luke was sweating it. In our text messages, he literally was just like, if Ohio State loses, he's like, I'm done. He's like, you're not going to see me. I'll bring you me for the rest of the week.
I think I might have gone silent that day.
Yeah.
You were. I would have been scared too. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm-hmm.
But last year their defense was ranked 16th nationally, and so the fact that they're returning most of their defense again, I'd be like, hey, as long as they don't have the same skid as last year, they're definitely gonna be a very competitive team.
Sure. It's true. So my number 4, I actually drank a little bit more Kool-Aid than you did, Luke, and so. So mine's Wisconsin. You've got about that 68-70% returning production, and they had an incredibly decent like in the terms of like a surprisingly well balanced team on both sides of the ball. Their defense did lack a little bit, but it seems like they're going to be a lot more mature this year. You have to have a good defense in the Big Ten. That's just not gonna. It just doesn't fly. But I personally think that Wisconsin's, you're going to see again. You've got the Van Dyke coming in. That's going to be a phenomenal pickup for them, and it's the type of offense he needs to play in. And that's where I think he kind of faltered a little bit at Miami, because that's not really the type of offense that Cristobal likes to roll. And so I think Wisconsin, we're going to see some step ups from Wisconsin. I don't think they're going to win the conference by any stretch of the imagination. I don't have them as a dark horse or anything like that. But I do think that they're going to give a good run for at least a potential playoff spot. If they go 10-2, with having especially an 18 overall strength of schedule, they should, unless their strength of resume just stinks, they should definitely be in the 12-team playoff for sure. So
yeah, I can definitely see that. So high on Wisconsin. 3, I've got Penn State. That's my number 3.
Okay.
I think that, you look at the six guys, I think they only had six coming in, but they did get, the 4-star wide receiver, Julian Fleming, from Ohio State. And then they had a 4-star cornerback, AJ Harris, that came over from Georgia. 6 offensive players coming back and 6 defensive players coming back. 74% of their offensive production, 66 of their defensive production. I honestly, Drew Aller, I think that this is going to be the year that he kind of steps into that role that they've been expecting him to, as long as James Franklin doesn't shoot themselves in the foot, as long as James Franklin doesn't kill the team. But I think that they've got enough. I think that the schedule bodes pretty well for them.
Yep.
And I see them as the 3rd best team in the Big Ten.
Okay. Dennis?
So let me ask this. Is the teams that we put above, are those the teams that we think they're going to win or just lead during the season?
I don't understand the question.
Like, is a team number 1 team is going to just win or have the number 1, let's say, seed of the conference during the regular season? Or is the number 1 team we think is going to win the conference championship?
I mean, my number 1 pick is going to be my number 1 pick to win the conference.
Yeah, gotcha. Then this changes a couple things.
Okay. I mean, we did the ACC and the Big 12.
I had to leave the space to say things because, like, I hate the fact I'm about to say this, but I'm gonna have to agree with Luke.
Okay.
And I hate that.
You should have let me go first, because then
I had to struggle with it. I wanted you to feel like how first place could, feel for you, like, instead of losing all the time.
So you're going Penn State, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm going Penn State.
That's a really long way to say you're going Penn State.
Again, I have to kind of leave some space to be able to just agree with that. I can't let him have that satisfaction.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like Penn State can have the potential to actually win the Big Ten. And I think they're going to they're benefiting so much, I feel like, more than any other team, with the Big Ten just giving up, like, hey, the West and East side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So now they're able to compete in the championship over just like, hey, we lost to Ohio State, we lost to Michigan. Now they're like, no, we can lose 1 game or 2 games to them, but we're still going to be able to compete for the overall Big Ten Conference Championship. Mm-hmm. So I definitely had them 3 and compete for maybe the 1st or 2nd spot.
Okay. So, well, I'm not going to waste any time. Luke, I totally agree with you about Penn State. I think and I, of course, that means I agree with Dennis too, but since Dennis, you didn't want to give Luke the satisfaction, I decided I'd give Luke the satisfaction. I'm not going to.
Means a lot to me.
You're welcome, man. The reason, just like my reasoning for why I put Nebraska in my top in the top 5, Penn State having a weaker strength of schedule is more favorable strength of schedule. To me, Penn State has kind of come across as this albatross over the past few years of the team that blocks everyone else, including themselves, from getting to the conference championship. So,
yeah,
that's why they're now at number 3, is because I feel like they're just going to block everyone else, including themselves, from getting to the conference championship.
It's a hell of a whole line right there.
Like, again, that's like, there's just like what everything that you guys both just said. I think that they've made some improvements where they need to make improvements. I think Franklin has some issues when playing against ranked teams, and that's unless he's worked psychologically, whatever that is, out, it's just going to continue. And I think Drew Aller has potential, but last year you only saw very small streaks of that. Again, he's just surrounded by a lot of talent, which is good for him.
Yeah.
He needs that. He needs that extra cushion. So hopefully he's developed more. I'd love to be proven wrong. I'd love to see them in the conference championship vying for a Big Ten championship.
Honest.
That would be awesome. The team has played hard enough for the past few years to earn that. But they seem to be the ones that are shooting themselves in the foot. And that's why I have them at number 3, is because they seem to be that arbiter of keeping everyone else out, including themselves.
Yeah.
So, number 2.
All right, so number 2, and I am going to give a little bit of a caveat to this.
Of course.
My top 2 teams, I really think that when you look at metrics, analytics, you look at, the up or down the roster, you could argue either way. So I'm going to say Oregon and Ohio State. I think it's pretty obvious they're going to be my top 2 teams.
Okay. So we're just going to go 1-2, 2-1, like it does.
I go on 2-1.
2-1. Okay.
But I'm caveating saying I'm picking the way that I'm picking because this is what I feel. But I'm not going to argue with anybody if they choose the other way.
Sure.
But my number 2 team is going to be Oregon.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, I'm going to be homer here. But yes, 100%. Now Oregon, I think the big thing is when you look at a couple of the guys that transferred in, Evan Stewart, the 5-star receiver who came in from Texas, and then you've got Dylan Gabriel coming in from Oklahoma. Those 2 guys really changed the dynamics of Oregon. Obviously, they had a good quarterback last year, but just wasn't quite able to get them, past Washington, really. But they've got 6 offensive returnees, 4 defensive. 68% of their offense's production is coming back, as well as 70% of the defense. And then when you add, especially that offense, you have almost 70% of their offense coming back, and you're getting a better quarterback, in my opinion, and another receiver who can be a game changer. They're going to be dangerous. And again, somebody puts them 1, I can't argue with you.
Sure. Dennis?
I think, and I'm going to say this just like Luke with a bit of caveat. My thing is, I feel like before the conference championship, Ohio State will be undefeated. So that goes without saying that they will beat Oregon. But they'll play Oregon and they'll lose the conference championship. That's why I asked the question. I was like, hey, just finishing the season or before we get to the conference championship, sure, how's that going to go? I feel like Ohio State, for the most part, is going to, optimistically, I'll say steamroll in the regular season. But for one reason or another, put it lightly, they're going to choke all day on the conference championship, and that's where Oregon is going to step up. Ohio State has bought their entire roster in a way. Not in the same way, I guess, negatively, that could be associated with that, but they've also built it. So I'll give them tremendous respect. It wasn't just bought. It wasn't like Ole Miss or anything like that. It was a mixture of both, predominantly with the other one, but still, very big on IL. But I have Ohio State at second, and it's not because of Luke. I genuinely believe they will be second.
So I agree with both of y'all's caveats. I mean, again, it is a toss-up with Oregon and OSU. I'm going to be honest, though. I'm going to be way more definitive. I do think Oregon is number 2. And the reason being is because of the fact that, like, more definitively number 2, it is because of the fact that while I incredibly confident in Dan Lanning, like his ability to coach, again, it's just that he's that upper level echelon of a coach. And while they're bringing back a good chunk, I mean, like 69% or whatever of their production, it doesn't change the fact that in big games last year, he would find ways to choke. Again, he could overcome that. And I get that Ryan Day has had similar experiences, but in my experience with Ryan Day, it's been more his players that have had issues with choking and not necessarily his play calling that's had issues with choking. Whereas Dan Lanning has made play calls that have caused chokes on the field.
Yeah.
And so I have a ton of confidence. I have zero doubt that he will eventually, if it's not this year, because again, it could be this year, but I seriously think that we're looking at an Oregon team next year that's going to be going to the conference championship. I still think personally that Oregon is going to be in the playoffs 100%, regardless of what happens this year. I think even if they go 10-2, but my thing is Dylan Gabriel is a good quarterback, not a great quarterback.
Mhm.
And
I mean, he took Oklahoma pretty high. They should not have been anywhere that high.
well, but here's the thing though. He did, but he wasn't. He honestly, Jackson Arnold seems like he's going to be a far better quarterback. And the only reason he didn't go in was because he was a freshman. And so I just have problems with because his play is incredibly inconsistent. And you see that with Oklahoma, because there were some games last year they lost they should never have lost.
Sure.
And that's the issue that I have, is you just don't know which version of Dylan Gabriel you're going to get on the field. And so because of that, I have to put Oregon at number 2. So I think we all know each other's one at this point.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's a pretty fair assessment to say I've got Ohio State at 1. I know that I'm a fan, I'm a homer, and we're gonna, Dennis is gonna he'll kill me for that and say that, but this year just seems different.
Sure.
This year just seems like there's just.
Oh, I think you said that last year too.
I might have. I mean, obviously we've got the tape now, so we can go back and look. All right, so obviously with that being said, I'm going Ohio State as my number 1, and we can call it a homer pick. I know Dennis is going to give me stuff about that, but this team, it just feels special. And again,
sure,
I'm an Ohio State fan. I'm going to say that, but there's just something going on that just feels different. I think a couple of the things that I look and I see is, one is, you mentioned Ryan Day kind of having some issues, having some, whether it be the players, his play calls. Last year in the Michigan game, there was a couple 4th downs and shorts that, you just kind of want to go for. But now with Chip Kelly, who is somebody that he respects, who he brought in to be the offensive coordinator, he's now given those reins up. So he's really being that CEO, head coach, and allowing Jim Knowles to run the defense and Chip Kelly to run the offense. So I think having somebody who's not looking at it from that head coaching perspective, but who has former head coaching experience, is going to be a great person on the sideline. You look at the players, they've got, all these guys coming back that are just wanting to win. They all talk about the reason that they came back is because they have unfinished business, that they need to get a pair of gold pants. They need to beat Michigan. You get brought in Caleb Downs, Seth McLaughlin, Quinshon Judkins. So not only are they bringing back just a plethora of talent, but they're adding to that in some aspects, some of the best talent that was out there to be in the transfer portal. So it just seems like a special team. Dennis, you can give me crap for that. But I've got them at 1. I think I kind of am disagreeing with you on one thing, is that I wouldn't be surprised if the regular season game was a lot closer, if that one was a nail biter, but I do have them winning the Big Ten championship.
And that's fair. Like, I think it will be split. I don't think if either team wins the first game, I don't think they're going to win both.
Yeah.
I'm very firm on that. And I'll be really surprised if that happens. But as we can all figure it out too, Oregon is my number 1.
Yep.
The momentum, everything that Dan Lanning has been able to do at Oregon, I feel like it's going to continue. And I feel like if the Pack is able to come in first season going there, I feel like it's gonna show how, not so much how powerful or how strong that side of the Pack was, that definitely had its weak points, but Oregon as a whole, I feel like they weren't just a team that was recruiting or preparing to be able to compete in the Pack, but be able to compete nationally. And with Dylan Gabriel at the helm, I feel like he's going to be a little bit more fine-tuned. Dan Lanning was able to help out that with Bo Nix instead of making just these silly errors. I think it's still going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's just characteristic of the type of player he is. But it's going to be definitely more fine-tuned. And I have Oregon just, I wish I could say running through the Big Ten, but I'll happily say, just swimming on through.
And I mean, to be fair for Dan Lanning, a lot of the calls that he made, like everybody gives him a hard time about, some of it going for it on fourth downs. And we've talked about this before. A couple of those plays goes the opposite way, and he's the best coach in college football.
Yep.
Like, you know what I mean? So like he kind of has the opposite issue of Ryan Day. Ryan Day was a little bit more timid. Dan Lanning was a little more aggressive, and it kind of has bit both of them in the butt for it. So,
sure. Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, if you guys haven't figured out, Michigan is I'm just kidding. Ohio State is my number one. And it's for me.
Wow, Ohio State not even in the top 5.
I know.
That's right there.
I know, right? No. So for me, there's a couple reasons why Ohio State's number one for me. And one, they're actually, weirdly enough, they are, out of all of my top 5, they're returning the least amount of production. But as we've already hit on, the amount of talent they've added in through the portal is insane. Dennis, you mentioned earlier that it's they've opened up their pocketbook, but it's not really like what Ole Miss did. I actually want to argue that it is kind of like what Ole Miss did, but with a caveat. They're also setting themselves up for next year. Ole Miss is doing everything for this year, which may bode well for them, but they really only have the steam for this year. Whereas Ohio State needs they're expected to have more of a legacy. And I know the Ole Miss fans are going to be like, well, we expect legacy too. I'm like, well, just remember, you guys haven't won a national championship in a long time. If not ever. I don't remember. I don't know. But Ohio State, though, on the other hand, like they did buy some players, but they also brought in players that were already really high on Ohio State when they were being recruited originally. So it's not quite that. To Dennis's point, it's not quite the same thing. The other thing is there are people that they brought in from the transfer portal that will not see the field this year. Like Julian Sayin, like he will be next year or the year after, provided he wins the QB battle.
Right.
And that type of stuff, bringing in a 5-star, like, was he number 1 recruit or number 2 nationally? I can't remember.
I want to say he was 1, but I can't remember.
Super high.
I think he was 1.
Yeah, and so when you're talking about that type of recruit coming from Alabama, going to Ohio State, and I get like his original reason was he wanted to work with Bill O'Brien, stuff like that. But I think when he got there, he realized, after Bill O'Brien got offered the job at Boston College, he's like, I actually really like it here. From what I understand, he's really enjoying the competition. He's really enjoying being developed. And so I think he's going to be able to learn from some veteran quarterbacks, and I think it's going to really help him at the end of the day. And that's going to not only make Ohio State a force to be reckoned with this year, because I've been saying, we've all been saying, but I've specifically been saying, if Ohio State doesn't make it a minimum to the national championship, they failed this year. And so I have to back my words up by saying they're also going to be number 1. I wouldn't be surprised if they're undefeated going all the way to the Natty. And do I think they're going to win the Natty? That's hard to say. Like, there are other teams that are just as talented as them. There's not as many of them, but they do exist out there. And there's some teams that are scrappier, in all honesty, than Ohio State this year. But they've got the raw talent and the depth. That's the thing that's going to be the thing. It's just like they've got the kind of the Georgia formula going on. And it's not just they don't have just the depth for this year. They have it for next year. So I feel like they're going to be just as dangerous next year as they are this year. So
one of the things somebody said, I think, one of our guys, Joke on Buck, said was they've got the talent, but this is like they're a team. And you really see that in the building. Is like they are a team. Julian Sayin was the number 3 quarterback. He was behind Dylan Raiola and DJ Lagway.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay, so Florida and Nebraska.
Florida and Nebraska.
Would have been Florida and Georgia, but Georgia lost out.
But yes,
that's rats.
And so Michigan. None of us had Michigan, huh?
No,
honestly, I feel like they could kind of creep into the top 5.
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like the 4 and 5 is competitive, but I just don't. I feel like maybe a little bit biased, but also I love what USC's defense coordinator. I love what he does in previous teams, previous schools. So that's why I had to include USC in mine.
So like,
No, and that. Go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, for me, like, the reason I didn't have UCLA or USC or Michigan is their strength of schedule is just too hard.
Mm.
They've got too many difficult games, and none of them are returning enough production to where especially USC is always going to be questionable on defense until they prove themselves. Because again, we've seen them supposedly bring in good defensive coordinators. We know that this guy's good. I'm not saying that he's not. We're just saying we don't know how well.
Quit being a Grinch.
No, well, it's literally we just don't know how he's going to perform in that type of atmosphere. Because let's be real. The head
Lincoln Riley lets him be a defensive coordinator, then
that's the issue. That's the issue. If he again, this year could really prove that. If it does, then USC could be very dangerous. And they could easily be a dark horse. But I don't see Michigan being a dark horse. They lost too much production. They're 130th ranked in returning production. You cannot be basically last. And then on top of that, you've got a head coach that's potentially facing suspension for a specific amount of games this year because of the stuff that he did. That's a recipe for lost games down the road.
Well, and he's a new first-time head coach.
Yeah, he's a great coach and did a phenomenal job last year. Let's be very clear.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a different world. He also has a whole new defensive coordinator, a whole new O-line, coach. He has a whole new D-line coach. He's had to completely build from the ground up. But it doesn't change the fact that you're also basically, it's a brand new team. I don't think Michigan's going to look anything like they did last year.
There's too much noise and too many eyes surrounding them. I feel like in order to succeed, and probably to a lot of Michigan fans and probably other people, expectation. Drawing up the natty, it's like I would be surprised if they have less than 4 losses.
Sure.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. I think their returning talent is where the returning talent is why I chose to not have them up there. Then you look at stuff like Rod Moore getting hurt, being gone for probably the season. Maybe he comes back towards the end. And then you've got a new head coach and new coaches at pretty much every place. It just doesn't bode well. And then you throw in the strength of schedule. Yeah, with teams like Texas and USC, Ohio State, and Oregon. It's like they're playing the gauntlet of the Big Ten.
Yep. And one of the best teams in the SEC. But
and one of the
that's one of the next episodes.
Come back next time.
So, anyways, well, again, write down below if you agree with our top 5 picks. Let us know what yours are. And come back next time, grab a drink, and join our conversation.